Tennessee Homestead. I was over here doing some work in the garage. Thought I'd sit down and take a little break and see if I could try to work through some of these GMO update information. Phew. I got to get off of these things, folks. This last round of information and research and that has just, it makes you angry. It truly does. I mean, they're getting very blatant with their activities, and you can see the handwriting on the wall. And if this doesn't get stopped, we have some big problems coming up. As I mentioned in the other video, you need to go out there and start reading Agenda 21. Folks, it is the plan for your life shortly. In about 13 years, this needs to be fully implemented. Read it. You'll understand why they're pushing so hard. They got a lot to do and a little time to do it in. And they're going to get it done. Okay? They're going to get it done. So let's talk about that just a little bit. About 45% of the agriculture land on the agriculture land that they have listed in the U.S. map for Agenda 41 or 21 is about 45%. The land already owned by corporations. Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah, pretty special. So you start looking at that and go, why just their land? Somebody want to explain that to me? Yeah, kind of interesting. You have the American farmer being pushed off the edge, this latest crop disease. And I didn't bring the information over here to the garage because I didn't plan to do this, but I think I could pretty much memorized it. They've had the spread of diseases, GOS, bacterial infection, the sudden death syndrome, and a couple others. But they're pretty naturally spreading diseases. They start out in one small location and they kind of spread out from there, and there you go. They just announced that the University of Kansas and the USDA has verified it now that indeed they have a new disease. They caught this at the end of the season. They're not too sure, since it looks like it's this just in the beginning stages of it, of how much crop damage it's going to do. They won't know probably till the damage is done next year. Okay. Yeah, kind of like plant your corn and see what happens. That's a risk that the American farmer can ill afford right now. Folks, they are teetering on the edge. They can't keep doing this. They really can't. Okay, so be advised. The American farmer's having a pretty rough time right now. And there's no turning back for them. Now, some would say self-inflicted wound, tough nuggies. There's times I feel that way. Your greed drove your farms into this. And it will be that greed of the people who are standing there letting you feed at their trough. It's going to be the end of you. I want you just to imagine a scenario here for a minute. Keep in mind one of the statements the government said, never let a good crisis go to waste. What happens when the American farmer, the mega farms, go down? What happens, folks? Well, there's no food. There's no food in the stores. You'll go in to buy groceries and you'll be doing good if you can walk out there with a bag full. Okay, people are going to get hungry. Big ag goes down. It's going to get tough. And here's what I'm beginning to see is the plan. They're going to let big ag go down. Right over the edge. And there's going to be a panic. And there'll probably be food riots. All that kind of stuff. Government's even training troops to deal with food riots. Yeah. Using that scenario for training their troops to deal with urban unrest. Keep that in mind. And then think about this for 30 seconds. If big ag goes down and you can't buy food in the grocery store, what are you going to do? It's going to be a hopeless situation for millions of Americans. It truly is. They're going to be looking to the government for help. Government's probably going to provide them help. Much like the Depression, herd them into the cities or into their human occupation zones and ration out food to them. But the next hit in that parade is going to be agriculture. You're going to have these big biotech companies going to the federal government and the UN, if they haven't even already talked about it. But the story you're going to get is saying, we could help out. We could probably turn this around in one growing season if we didn't have all these pesky regulations to deal with. Yeah. Think about that for 30 seconds. No regulations. And again, Case International Harvester just announced their new robotic tractor that can run 24/7, 365. Beautiful thing, 419 horse beauty. Doesn't come with a cab, a seat, or a steering wheel. Totally robotic. Operated off of the auto drive technology out of the automotive industry and out of the GPS technology from agriculture. They say one little guy can sit in a control room and farm 1 million acres. Don't need the farmer. Don't need the farmer. Right down to they even got set up for little robotic truck trailers you can hook onto the back of another one, and it'll come up alongside your combine there and just load your grain as you go. And then head off to the silo. Totally automated. 365, 24/7. Figure it increase yields by 200%. And when you look at the maps for Agenda 21, you will see that that would probably be enough acreage, 45% of the current farmland, to pull off what they're looking to pull off. So, is it possible for them to take over agriculture and control your food from cradle to grave? Yeah. But let me tell you, when these corporations step in and take control of your food source, you'll pay dearly for it. There'll be food on the shelves. But that food will cost you a fortune. You'll virtually be exchanging your paycheck for a bag of groceries. Because somebody's got to pay for that technology. That somebody's going to be you. Now, you're going to be enslaved to the big corporations, which really, the big corporations run our government. So you want to meet the people in charge? That's it. That's it. We're a fascist government ran by corporations. And now you're going to be begging at the fascist corporations' table for crumbs. And they're not going to care if they don't leave $1 in your pocket and you still hungry. They're not going to care. What else you going to do, folks? What else you going to do? Better wake up. How are they going to bankrupt the American farmer, drive him out? Well, let's look at this latest and greatest. Okay. This new disease has never been in the United States, ever been in this country. Never been here. Matter of fact, it's not found in most of the world. It is found in one country, South Africa. Yeah. Do these companies grow some of their GMO seed in South Africa? Yeah, they do. Now, let's look at it one step further. This seed, they should have been watching for this disease and seed in South Africa. But this disease now is in America. How did it get here? Surely they weren't exporting their seed out of South Africa to America. I mean, look at all the, available plots that these companies have under control here. They would have plenty of seed corn right here present in the United States. But indeed, by the evidence, the USDA has kind of went, that's what had to have happened. And I'll tell you why. If a disease breaks out in an area, it breaks out in an area, then slowly spreads out from there. Next year it affects neighboring fields, blah, blah, blah. This disease, when they first discovered it, they found it in the following: Colorado, Illinois, Nebraska, Kansas, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Texas. Folks, that isn't a spread out. That was somebody planted this stuff. Had to have. Too wide ranging of an area for a normal, natural spread of a disease. The American farmer, probably last year, was given contaminated seed out of South Africa. There you have it. Now, was it accidental or intentional? A crop could have a disease and you not be able to tell, right? This particular disease leaves a definite mark on the corn plant, easy to see in its beginning stage. And that marks stay on the leaf the entire season. And I'm telling you right now, I could take anybody out of this audience that doesn't know a corn plant from a petunia, and in 5 minutes show you the pictures and point you to a cornfield and say, go pick out the infected plants, and you could do that. Very obvious. Very obvious. So either they employ the stupidest people that God ever placed on this planet that couldn't tell that they had an infected crop of seed corn, or else they knew they had an infected crop of seed corn and did not care. Now, what do you think? There's the facts. Okay? This particular disease marks corn in such a way you couldn't have done a better job with a neon light flashing over this plant sick. That bad. But it came to America, folks. And next year at harvest time, they'll know just how bad it affected the American farmer. Now, let me explain something to you. That American farmer is going to pay another premium price. Probably drain the last of his assets and his resources to buy another crop of grain. And their best they can tell him is, well, we'll see if it dies or not. You think these companies are going to give them a refund? You think they're going to take any responsibility for this? Could it bankrupt the American farmer? You bet. When Big Ag goes down, you have a food crisis. When you have a food crisis, they're going to step in and take over your food source cradle to grave. And then you talk about having a crisis. The reason you'll be living in those 4 occupancy zones for human occupancy is you'll want to be there. 1, you won't be able to afford a car. You have no need for one if you move to that occupied zone, and that's good because you're not going to be able to afford one because you're going to have to buy food. You don't need the big house in the suburbs, and you won't be able to afford the big house in the suburbs. Why? Because you have to buy food. You won't have the fancy furniture, the Xboxes, the flat screen TVs, and all this kind of nonsense that you have grown so accustomed to, your little iPhones. You won't need them anymore. And you won't be able to afford them anymore. Because you'll be buying food. You're talking about, folks, realistically, a 50-pound bag of their corn seed. A 50-pound bag of corn seed. Last year's price, depending on the traits and so forth you purchased, could be as high as over $500 for 50 pounds. To a bunch of farmers that got back about $3 a bushel on corn. Think about that. And that doesn't include their herbicides, their diesel, their, all of their fertilizers, all the other stuff that they have to pay for to get out there. Okay? These guys didn't break even. And now they're basically being told next year, your crop may fail. it's got a new disease. Think about that for a minute. It's kind of like your boss coming up and saying, we're going to need you to work a lot of overtime the next year. Don't know if we're going to be able to afford to pay you for it, but we're going to need you. When Big Ag goes down, folks, you're going to be in a food crisis. They're going to respond to that food crisis. And at that point, cradle to grave, it's theirs. They're starting a disinformation campaign to where you'll feel good about that food. You'll be safe. It's good stuff. Monsanto says so. I recently had a question come up on some of the stuff that I'd put out about the mother's breast milk, and I guess somebody thought, where's the peer-reviewed research? I kind of chuckled. I went out and looked at my notes. There was some peer reviews. There was some research done, and they had the methods of their testing peer-reviewed, which really didn't work out too well for them because dairy experts took them apart of saying that the way you were testing the milk, like it was a dairy cow's milk, cows and humans have an entirely different biology, and that would have gave you a truckload of false negatives. Researchers came back and told them, folks, when you took that milk and handed it to Mother Monsanto so that they could check it out, before they even tested it, gave it to Monsanto so that they could review it. They said right there you lost control of your samples, and therefore they could have been tampered with, tainted, whatever. No good. It would become junk science on that. But let's go a few steps further with this whole thing. The top 2 lead researchers on that team, five authors altogether, the top 2 were given large grants by Monsanto. Large grants. The other 3, Monsanto didn't need to give grants to. They were already Monsanto employees. But that's okay. There was an independent lab that checked it out. This is in like 2015, folks. Independent lab. Yeah. In 2013, it was listed on Monsanto's financial reports. 2013, 2 years prior to this independent lab testing this stuff. And they were listed as a contractor for Monsanto working in their feed and GMO products. Independent. What do you think? Then I started doing a brief search of Dr. McGuire herself. And it sounds like her family's got a real history of being cheerleaders for Monsanto. Her husband, out of Idaho State University, was the biggest promoter for Monsanto's bovine growth hormone that darn near ruined the cattle industry. Peer-reviewed research, it was junk science at best. It was primarily an attempt, and here's why they pushed so hard for it. Tests in the U.S., now granted, this was mothers across America, had some samples submitted for testing. Triggered by a mother who had an autistic child who had hers tested and it came up positive for glyphosate. Mothers across America submitted samples, got that tested too. Out of, I think, 13 samples or whatever, only 3 of them was positive. In Europe, it was higher, in the EU. And that's really strange because in the EU, they have lower levels of this stuff allowed. But as soon as that report came out, boom, I don't even want to mention the university because it's embarrassing to them, I'm sure, because if you go out there right now, you can't hardly find anything on this. It's gone. Every time you click on something, go into that research, touch page not found. Yeah. I think the universities woke up to, this isn't good. Let's kind of move along here. But here's the simple fact. It was the Monsanto McGuire research, and that's what everybody's calling it out there because facts are facts, folks. Monsanto, it was Monsanto's research. They even paid for the testing. Was to dispel that there was glyphosate in mother's milk. And here is the reason. They have told the FDA and the EPA that glyphosate passes right through your urinary tract and will not build up in the body or affect your cells. If they find glyphosate in mother's milk, it means that was a lie. The whole premise was a lie. And it would force the federal government to go back and rechange everything as far as glyphosate goes. Most probably, folks, banning it. Because if it builds up in your body, it's a toxin and will kill you eventually. And for it to be in mother's milk, it has to be building up in your body. They have a lot to lose here, folks. A lot of money changed hands. But this Dr. McGuire, wow. Her husband helped promote the bovine growth hormone. That man needs to be taken out and beat with a club. He did so much damage to agriculture, it's pathetic. And claims to be a veterinary. I would not take a poodle into him to have him look at it. He's a quack. So, keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're looking at research. Run it to ground, folks. Takes time, but run it to ground. When you run this research to ground, you'll learn a lot. You will find that most positive things about these herbicides and so forth can usually be drawn straight back to Monsanto or one of its other companies and see where they poured a lot of money to make sure you didn't get told the truth. Glyphosate apparently does build up. There is no connection between the mothers across America's testing labs and the EU's testing labs, two entirely different things. And I'm beginning to get to the point that the only country that I would trust to get in here and really look at this is the French. They seem to be not afraid of these people. I got a chuckle once, told my wife, it's probably because, the French take their food as being almost sacred. Probably ticks them off, they're messing with it. Maybe we should get that way too. So, yes, and to date, at my last check, there is no real peer-reviewed research on this issue. Nobody wants to pick it up. It's kind of like global warming, folks. If you come out against Monsanto and these biotech companies with research, look for them to spend billions of dollars trying to discredit and ruin you. Researchers don't want to end their careers like that. Let's move on to something else. See what I'm saying? This is Rich from Tennessee Homestead. Wake up, folks. You can still stop them. Apparently, by Wendy's stuff, you're hurting them. Don't hurt them. Kick them down the street. Totally cut them off. Get your friends and neighbors, cut them off. Do what you got to do to stop these people, because otherwise, they're going to cram Agenda 21 down your throat. And my friend, you will spend your life working for food. You might as well get your sign and get on the street corner and get ready, because that's what's headed your way. God bless you. I love you. I'm trying to warn you. They are destroying your agricultural system, and they're doing it for a purpose. Be careful. This is Rich from Tennessee Homestead. Actually made it through it without getting too angry. Have a great day.